Thank you, councillors. Good evening to one and all, and to our staff and executive that are here, and obviously our councillors. I'd like to start by opening and declaring the meeting open. It's now Tuesday, the 27th of June 2023, and just a slightly late start at 6:01 p.m. Can we acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and also pay our respects to elders both past and present? Again, can I ask all present to make sure your mobile phones are please turned off for the duration of tonight's meeting. This meeting is also being live streamed via the city's YouTube channel to 2 people, I believe, but nevertheless, it's being live streamed. Council meetings are public meetings, and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament, and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them, and nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the City of Canning unless it is adopted by a resolution of council. The confirmed minutes of a meeting are the official record of that council meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the City publishes a recording of the meeting. Recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the City's express permission. And the purpose for tonight's meeting is to consider the adoption of the 2023-2004 annual budget. Attendance tonight. We have apologies from Councillor Jessie Jacobs, who is not with us this evening, and also Councillor Sarah Sabiri, who is not with us this evening. Approved leave of absence at item 2.2, there are none. Disclosures of interest at item 3. CEO, have we received any disclosures in regards to tonight's agenda?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to item 3.1, declarations of financial interest, we have received none. And again, in relation to item 3.2, declarations of impartiality interest, I have received none.
Thank you. Then we will move to item 4, which is question time for the public. I don't propose to open or close public test question time, as we have no members of the public present this evening. Announcements by the presiding member at item 4.1. There are none this evening. The receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. Similarly, there are none. Let's get down to the order of business, councillors. At item 5.1, reports. The first and only report of this evening is a report from Ms Lorraine Driscoll, the Director of Corporate and Commercial, and it is CC 003 of 23, the 2003-2024 annual budget. Councillors, the recommendation is on screen, and it also is on page 5 of the agenda. I'd like to move that from the chair, and I would ask for a seconder. Seconder? Councillor Spencer-Teo, of course. Councillors, I'd just like to start by thanking all of you, and including those councillors that are not here this evening, for the work undertaken to deliver the budget tonight as is. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes, and also to thank our staff and our CEO, Mr Michael Littleton, for guiding us through the project. And I note, of course, whilst Mr Littleton was here at this time last year, much of the work undertaken at that time was perhaps completed by others, and this is really his first budget, and it's a wonderful outcome for this city, because we have pretty much delivered a balanced budget with an operational surplus. And I go back to my election as a mayor in 2019, and the disruption caused the following year by COVID in 2020, and the predicament that we learned as a council that our finances were not probably in the condition that we needed them to be, and that set this council on a course of adopting its long-term financial plan, which gave us a real opportunity to work incredibly hard and be committed to a financial course which would put this council back into a financially sustainable position. And so tonight, despite delivering significant benefit to our community, this council has stayed the course with a long-term financial plan, and even despite inflationary pressure that we know is real and has been felt right across the country, we have been able to deliver a balanced budget and only a 4.65% increase to our rates, which is markedly less than those figures presented by others because of those inflationary pressures on our budget. Everything we do and everything we provide is costing more money. And that's a reality. It's costing us more to deliver the sorts of services to the standard that our community is requiring us to. Yet in this budget, we're able to provide capital projects at an extraordinary level, but better than that, we're actually listening to our community. And we have listened in a raft of areas. I spoke to Councillor Hardeep Singh just before tonight's budget delivery, and we talked about increases, the significant increase, about 400%, amounting to about $80,000 to the security incentive scheme. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but that's a small gain for this community because it shows our commitment to community safety. And we are upgrading parks and playgrounds, and our investment in playgrounds across the city is quadrupled in the next 12 months, and the biggest investment ever by the city in similar investment. And I'm incredibly proud that at Shelley Beach Park in the coming year, the city will be investing in delivering its very first playground of the level of a district level, and that's a really big plus for the city because I'm keen, and the council is keen to be continually providing those sorts of amenities that might attract and retain younger families, because younger families are the future of this community. So I understand there may be an amendment, and I understand that Councillor Singh may be potentially putting a foreshadowed motion, but I strongly support the intent of tonight's budget, and I commend Council to unanimously adopt it because it is a budget that I think reflects incredibly well on you as councillors and the work we have done as a team to deliver a budget that is in keeping with the expectations of our community and is respectful and considerate of the pressures that people find themselves under. Our increase across the board, our average increase this year will be only $60 per household, but we as a council are delivering a budget where people can see tangible benefit to their communities, tangible uplift in the quality of amenity for recreational purposes, for sports groups, for community groups, for every thing that we do that is a touch point for our community. We have improved those things and invested in them because we know that is the expectation of our community. So not only are we moderately increasing our rates, but we're making sure that our community can actually see where that money is being invested in. And I know that the community is starting to see improved amenity right across the community, and that's also one thing that I'm incredibly proud of, that investment has actually been balanced right across the city of Canning, from each side of Canning and every corner. Everybody is seeing a benefit. I won't say more on it, councillors, other than to ask you to please support the budget tonight unanimously. We would like to show a united front on this current budget. Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll save speaking on the recommendation till later. I'm just going to moving my amendment straight away, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
I did distribute this to elected members and staff, I think it was yesterday, and there's just one minor addition in, excuse me, just down at the end to say that, I guess basically to spell out that we will be deferring the irrigation works that have been, that were in the recommendation.
You just wanted to, did you want to put your amendment immediately, did you?
Yes.
Okay, you'll just need to ask for a seconder for your, ask for a seconder for the amendment, which is up on a screen at the moment. Councillor Bain is the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bain. I understand you've been working with Councillor Spencer-Teo on this, so thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo, please continue. The matter has been seconded. Please speak to the amendment.
Thank you. So late last year, I supported the notice of motion NOM 1222 with the intention of delivering community-driven public open space infrastructure upgrades to those areas within the TPS 23. And I've made it clear since then that the intent was to allocate these, never to allocate these funds to irrigation renewals. For years, I've sat in budget meetings and heard small items like bench seats, drinking fountains and basketball court renewals couldn't be funded because we simply don't have the financial capacity to deliver them. Yet year after year, we're presented with projects outside the budget, such as Gibbs Street, the upscoping of Willerton Junior Footy Club, Wandara Hall upscoping and optional extras, and the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we went over budget for Webb Street. But somehow, despite these unbudgeted expenses, we still managed to move things around and deliver a balanced budget. So does that mean it comes down to prioritisation? So we knew we had ageing irrigation infrastructure a couple of years ago, and we needed to start renewing it. Yet after this was brought to our attention, administration has recommended funding expenditure for projects outside of the budgets. We're elected by the community to represent the interest of those who fund the city's operations. For the most part, our residents don't ask for much. They want value for money for their rates, and they want access to decent playgrounds and facilities within their local areas. This amendment prioritises that without using municipal funds and guarantees the delivery of community-driven minor infrastructure upgrades using funds specifically for the purchase or improvement of public open space and infrastructure. TPS funds are paid in addition to rates. Shouldn't these funds be invested into things a community can use, see, feel, appreciate, and meet their expectations? By all means, if those expectations are met, then we can start looking at renewals such as irrigation. Now, it is frustrating to know that many of the 13 playground renewals within the Beeloo ward over the last few years could have been funded by TPS funds instead of municipal funds, but we can't change the past, and unfortunately we can't retrospectively apply these funds. However, if we use the remaining TPS funds to deliver the renewals of public open space infrastructure in this TPS area, we will free up municipal funds for those areas in Canning which have not been prioritised, like Canning Vale, Willerton and Cannington. So I ask you, councillors, to please support this amendment tonight and make sure that we deliver these community-driven infrastructure projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe this amendment reflects the intention of NOM 1222 and Council's desire as to how TPS 23 funds should be used. In the 2021 Market Community Survey, our community was very clear as to how Canning can improve its POS. Its advice in the survey was: 1. Provide more playgrounds with family facilities, i.e. barbecues. 2. Provide improvement and maintenance to existing playground equipment. And 3. Provide shade sales at playgrounds. Further feedback recorded in the survey was: build more basketball hoops. The TPS 23 money is a bonus. It should be spent on the assets our community is asking us to upgrade, but we have previously been unable to because of budget restrictions. Reticulation projects in the TPS 23 area should be funded as all reticulation projects are across the city and have been in the past, using municipal funds based on an order of priority. Using TPS 23 funds to fund the listed projects will free up municipal funds for expenditure elsewhere in the city. The list of projects responds to community requests and the feedback provided in the community survey. I hope that the amendment receives Council's support. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? First off, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. I just got a couple of questions of either staff or the councillors. With respect to the nominated projects, well, the comment has been that it frees up municipal funding, but were these projects actually going to be funded in the next few years?
CEO,
Where did they come from, sorry?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Deputy Mayor, there is a broader list of projects that were identified when the staff did a review of the TPS 23 area, and that broader list was consolidated into the 4-year priority list, which was presented as part of this budget process. There are a number of projects which are listed in the amendment which weren't within the first 4 years, and a number of them were at a granular level. For example, bench seats, which weren't picked up in the broader assessment of public open space infrastructure. We focused on, I guess, the higher value elements of public open space infrastructure, and so, look, there is an argument that a number of those projects that are listed would be delivered over a period of time. I understand the elected members wish to see those projects delivered over the next 3 financial years. We have done a preliminary assessment on a number of them, and they can be brought forward if that is the council's wish.
Deputy Mayor?
But just to confirm, a number of these items that are listed here would likely be carried out in the next few years using municipal funding.
Director Bowe?
Subject to council endorsement, Deputy Mayor, the projects would be listed on the budget, but there are a couple of those within the list of the amendment which are either unscoped or it's unclear as to whether or not a defined service level or the actual location of the parks and other associated non-local government infrastructure would enable the projects to proceed. So further work and investigative work, and including, I would think, some consultation would need to occur before we'd made a recommendation to include those projects in the budget.
So sorry, I've just got a few. Given that this amendment is premised on several financial years, does that mean that it would be presented to council following that sort of work, whether some of these actually are carried out?
Director Bowe?
Yes, I think so, Deputy Mayor. They would be presented to council for consideration.
CEO, you wanted to?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Only just to confirm, it would be our intention to review the list that is the subject of the amendment and update our programs. You would recall we presented you a 4-year program for irrigation, for playgrounds and the like. We would need to review that and come back through our budget planning through this coming financial year. So we'll take the steer from the council if the amendment is agreed. We would obviously need to consider those things and send them off for ministerial approval as well, because that is the other requirement of TPS money.
Thank you. Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, with respect to both the Velgrove Park irrigation and Woodford Park irrigation, what would happen in terms of, would that be funded potentially next year with municipal funding? How does those irrigation projects compare to other irrigation projects? How many years do they have before the expected renewal?
Director Bowe?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When we received the proposed amendment yesterday, notionally it removes $485,000 of funding out of the irrigation program. We would then need to do a reassessment of next year's, we have done a reassessment of next year's irrigation program and reprioritised those particular projects based on an allocation minus $485,000.
Deputy Mayor? Anything further? Do you want to speak to the amendment?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hardeep Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to Director Bowe. Just to clarify, if this amendment is approved by the council, then $485,000 of irrigation works which are supposed to be carried out this financial year as part of the proposed budget will not be carried out, and those works will highly likely be accommodated in next year's budget. Is that right?
Director Bowe?
Yes, I think that's more or less correct. $485,000 of funding, which in the current budget is funded through TPS 23 funding, it would be removed from the budget.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Sweeney.
Yes, I'm going to speak against the amendment. Look, while I can appreciate the two councillors' passion to get these projects that we can see up on the screen up and running, there is a process. And first of all, my first point is that this amendment has come in on the 11th hour. I don't feel I'm quite rightly prepared to even look at this, particularly when we're talking about TPS reserves, which are restricted by legal compliance. So, there is some significant oversight in the way that we do manage our TPS reserve funds. And I don't feel like I've had the adequate time to be able to research this. Secondly, just on the face of it, I think what I'm seeing here, that this amendment really is a step too far. I don't, I think that we shouldn't be, as councillors, stepping too far into the operational runnings of the administration, which I feel that this is entering into. I don't think that we should be micromanaging our CEO or our directors. I think these people are very well paid. They are selected because of their qualification, their knowledge and experience, far better than any of us. And I think we should be guided by those recommendations in relation to things like how we distribute these TPS reserve funds. So I don't think that we should be butting in. I think we should be butting out. As councillors, I think that we have a role which is an overseeing role. And that's where it finishes. I think in some of the training that we've had over the years, we've been told there's been numerous inquiries where councillors have overstepped their mark and delved into areas of operational responsibilities that are affecting the administration. And for me, and I haven't researched a lot of this, but on the face of what I'm seeing up here, I'm feeling that this is one of these cases where I think councillors, as councillors, we are overstepping our mark into the administration of running the operations of the administration. So I think for me, councillors, just to wrap it up, at this stage, I won't be supporting it, and I would ask all councillors to have a think about what I just raised and to make sure that we do oversee, we don't overstep, and to always ensure that we always keep our fingers out of the administration's business. We oversee and we hold them to account for what they do. But for me, on the face of it, what I'm seeing here, this is certainly a step too far at this point in time.
Thanks, councillors. In the absence of anyone else wishing to speak, look, I'll support the amendment, and I must say, just in response to what I've just heard, it's not overstepping by proposing an amendment to the budget. That is council's role to propose amendments, and this is our budget. It's not necessarily the administration's budget. It's a collaborative, and I'm a little bit surprised to hear the councillor speaking so strongly against this amendment, since it actually will be funding hundreds of thousands of dollars of benefit to the ward in which he is actually the elected representative. But that notwithstanding, it is not overreach in any shape or form, and it is our prerogative as councillors to put amendments and to discuss those and to reach agreement, which we will do shortly. My belief with this, and the TPS was raised by councillors earlier in the year, and I thought it was incredibly clever to identify those funds that had not been spent and were available for community projects. And I agree that people are quite tactile, and that this is an opportunity for us, and the intent had always been that those funds would be invested into community benefit. And whilst I understand the need for irrigation, the city certainly has a requirement to upgrade irrigation, and this council has ascribed to those requests earlier. I think we spent $1 million last year upgrading necessary drainage and plumbing and reticulation at Wildback Golf Course. And of course, that's business as usual for any council, any large city. But I think in this instance, it's appropriate that money, this money that has materialised, that has been identified by councillors for this purpose, is actually reinvested into that area, because I think that is what, I know that is what the residents in that area would actually be supportive of. And I'm sure that whilst we don't have an audience here tonight and we barely have anyone at home, when people do find out about this amendment tonight, which has been put by two councillors here, Councillor Bain and Councillor Spencer Teo, I think they will be applauding the decision for that money to be invested here. And just based on what we heard, and Councillor Singh asked a very relevant question, and I know that he is very committed to finding savings for this council. I have absolutely no doubt under the guidance of the CEO here in the executive that we will find further savings for next year's budget, and we'll be able to accommodate these works, these plumbing works next year or in following years without any doubt. I have no issue at all. So I strongly support the recommendation and think it's a fine recommendation should be supported, and I look forward to especially seeing the investment in the Williri Park dog park, which has been underfunded, I think, since we ticked off on that some years ago as a council, and I know there's been many questions about that, and I think it's a really admirable gesture that we will be investing funds into that, much needed funds to bring that up to speed quickly. And that's what that TPS was for. That's what those funds were put aside for. And now they will be reinvested into things we can touch and feel in that community. And I think that's a wonderful outcome. So thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak before I hand it back to Councillor Spencer-Teo? No one else. Councillor Spencer-Teo, did you want to just provide some response? We only had one councillor speaking against it. That was Councillor Sweeney. And just please confine your responses just to rebuttal, please, and then we'll go to the substantive motion.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Considering I've been accused of interfering with administration, I feel like I should respond to those accusations. The notice of motion 1222, which this amendment confirms, was carried unanimously back in November. Councillor Sweeney mentions about holding administration to account. Well, it's kind of what we're trying to do here. There obviously was a misinterpretation or some confusion over to maybe the intent of what council wanted to spend these funds on. It was made very clear throughout the budget workshops and budget process that both myself and Councillor Bain were not on the same page as administration when it came to allocating these TPS funds. Therefore, I believe we are simply doing our job, advocating for the community, although I do admit that, irrigation is required. Community advocacy is what we're elected to do, and that's merely what this amendment is doing. So that's all I have to say. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, without any further ado, we will put the amendment to the vote, please. Thank you, Governance.
Amendment to CC 00323 has been carried with 8 in favour and 1 against, with Councillor Sweeney voting against the amendment.
Thank you, councillors. The amendment has been carried and now forms part of the substantive motion. The substantive motion is now back on screen. I've already spoken in support of the substantive motion. Councillor Spencer-Teo has spoken and chose to actually pass an amendment at that time. Did anybody else wish to actually speak on the substantive motion, which is the budget this evening? Councillor Sweeney.
Yes, thank you. I just got some questions.
Yep, go ahead.
Just on page, my first one, I've got a few. My first one is on page 26. Just going through it, I noticed that the title of that page is Statement of Comprehensive Income by Nature for the year ending 30th of June 2024.
This is page 26 of the officer's report?
Page 26, yeah.
Okay.
Just down the page there, we look at the budget for 2022 to 2023. There's a figure there of 7756, and the actual that was spent for 2022 to 23. There's a variance there where it is 23,880. There's quite a big variance there. I'd just like some clarity or some further explanation, if I could, just with that variance.
Director Driscoll. Have you found the reference on page 26?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just getting to that. 2 seconds. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Have you found that light on?
To the finance manager.
Sorry?
I might refer this to our finance manager, Mr Adewale.
Mr Adewale, are you able Did you understand the reference provided by Councillor Sweeney? Have you been able to find that on page 26? I'll get you just to respond to that question if you're able to. The question was in relation to the variance there for that line item that he identified. We'll just put the microphone back on. Just hang on a sec. I think it was turned up. There, it's on now. Well done.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you for the question. If it's relation to the estimated actual for 22-23, which is shown as 23.8 million compared to 7 million. So to start with, these are estimated balances which are subject to end of year adjustment that we perform, as well as subject to audit report as indicated in the body of the council report. But just providing some high level overview. Some of the variance relates to, as you can see, profit on asset disposal. So we are budgeting for a loss and there is a profit provided in there. So that is subject to, again, end of year adjustment where we will compare what was the actual value of the asset disposed of. And the second biggest item is on materials and contracts. So again, the potential savings could come from big projects like, is there a change in underground power cost, or is there a change because of the LED power project that was part of the budget but was not carried out during the year? So these are only estimated actual, councillor, and they are subject to end of year adjustment. And as indicated, if we do have any genuine saving at end of the year on account of vacancies because of employee cost or any materials in the contract, we would be transferring those savings across to reserve in accordance with the council policy.
And Councillor Sweeney, just on that, I mean, I think you're looking at the 2022-23 figures where the budget tonight is considering the 2023-24 budget. Did you have another question, Councillor?
What else did I pick up? The on page 41. On page 41 under plan and equipment, or the notes, fixed assets, on that page there, page 41. Under property, plant and equipment. Plant and equipment, 23-24's got a figure there for 6624. I don't know, I haven't seen what we spent the money on from 22-23. There seems to be a significant jump there from 2837. What would be the jump there? Why? What are we buying? Are you on the right page?
Mr. Adewale, I'll allow the question, but I'm just struggling to find how this is relevant to the recommendation on screen. I'll just ask Director Bowe to respond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The increase year on year from last year's budget to 23-24 is a result of our significant investment in additional plant for our waste services and a number of other heavy plant items that are included in our plant asset renewal plan.
And they're funded from reserve.
And the CEO has just added that they are funded from reserve. Councillor Sweeney, anything further?
No, not on that. And to answer your question, Mr Mayor, we haven't had an agenda briefing on this. So I thought we could look at this and ask questions. I think it's quite significant, some of the questions that I'm asking. I'm not sure what the problem is here for you.
I don't think there's any problem at all. I'm just struggling to understand the relevance of them, but nevertheless, you're asking them. So if you've got any further questions to ask that you feel are relevant to the recommendation tonight in relation to the 2023-24 budget, well, then I'd be happy to hear them. Councillor Spencer-Teo, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Thank you to Director Bowe who answered it earlier, but I've just got a follow-up question on the capital works project on page 134, item 65, the court resurfacing. I believe that is for Willerton and Parkwood tennis courts. Could you just tell me what portion of that 50,000 is for which courts?
Director Bowe.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Approximately $30,000 is for the court resurfacing of the final two courts at Whaleback. We intend to upgrade the surface there and include some additional line marking for multi-use, multi-purpose use there, and the remainder will be predominantly allocated to some resurfacing at the Willerton Tennis Club.
So when you say multi-purpose, will that mean we'll be installing a basketball hoop there? Is that the intention of multi-purpose?
Director Bowe.
We hadn't thought about installing multi-purpose courts for basketball. There are other types of ball sports that can be played on tennis courts, like
Pickleball.
Pickleball is, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And there's
for your
another
help.
derivative as well, which we'll be looking to explore at Parkwood once we assume the management of those courts and the golf course broadly.
So that's with the resurfacing we did last year, and that's now all the courts at Whaleback will now be resurfaced?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, you had a foreshadowed motion that you wanted council to see, and that will mean that council has an alternative to the recommendation in front of it. Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll just ask governance to please put that foreshadowed motion up on the screen if it's not already there. I think it's only one relatively small change, and I think it should be in a red type. Councillor Singh, I'll just wait till... I think we might have actually passed the first two. Councillor Singh, just quickly, you're proposing a foreshadowed motion.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by speaking about the substantive motion, and then I'll get to the foreshadowed motion. Thank you very much for bringing it up on the screen. It's better to actually, if we go to item 4A, that's more relevant, and then to item 16, which is in the red. So let me start by sharing some news from today's Financial Review newspaper. Number one.
Just to be clear, though, Councillor, you can't speak to a foreshadowed motion. You've got no right to address us about the foreshadowed motion. The foreshadowed motion is up on screen. You can speak to or against the recommendation in front of you, that's all.
That's thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm speaking against the recommendation, which is the substantive motion. Once I have spoken about the recommendation, then I will propose this foreshadow motion. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
So let me start by sharing some news from today's Financial Review newspaper. Number one, the latest True Issues survey by JWS Research shows that the cost of living remains firmly entrenched as the key concern for voters, with 75% of respondents nominating it. Number two, Metcash Chief Executive Doug Jones says shoppers at IGA and Foodland stores are trading down from fresh ingredients to cheaper frozen goods. Number three, Coles and Woolworths said in their April trading updates that customers were substituting cheaper home brand versions of items in their baskets. I hope these new news lines makes it very clear that cost of living issue is so serious that this is forcing people to change their food choices. In my opinion, it is one of the worst times for City of Canning to increase its rates, as it will further stretch the already fragile household budgets. In order to keep the residential rates same as last year, we need to decrease the proposed operating expenditure of $126.4 million by 1.6% only. And this will provide a 4.65% relief in rates to homeowners. I believe it is a good compromise given the recent monumental increase in cost of living. This proposed 4.65% increase in rates will highly likely lead to public dissatisfaction and perhaps criticism of our city. I agree that maintaining rates is a delicate balance, as our city needs to generate revenue to provide essential services. Hence, it is important that this council requests our CEO and his capable team to identify non-essential projects which can be delayed or cancelled to offset the potential loss of revenue, which I believe is around $1.96 million only, by keeping the residential rates same as last year. So I propose the foreshadowed motion, which is actually, I would like to propose a foreshadow motion, which is which is keeping majority of the items of the substantive motion as same, and only changing item 4A, rate in dollar value, basically keeping the residential rates same as last year, and which will cause a potential loss of $1.96 million, and adding item 16, which is asking our CEO to find savings in order to offset that potential loss of revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone else wish to speak either for or against the matter? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I'd like to speak in favour of the officer recommendation. And I do so because when I started on council in early 2020, Canning was one of the lowest rateable councils in WA. We had ageing infrastructure literally falling apart, and we were unable to deliver a balanced budget or meet expectations of our community without selling our land. Councils before my time kept rates to a bare minimum and voted against modest increases year after year, and we were unable to fund renewals, which is why we were put in this situation of not being able to deliver renewals or meet community expectations. With the review of our long-term financial plan, I committed to increase rates over a three-year period to fix the past that we had inherited and return the city to a balanced budget position whilst focusing on community infrastructure renewals. I also committed to making some really tough decisions, like supporting the exit or divesting from services that were no longer within the remit of local government and from those other services that contributed considerably to the substantial annual financial losses of the city. Adopting this year's recommended rate in the dollar is the final step in my commitment. While I appreciate the efforts of administration to reduce the operating expenditure in this budget, I believe more can still be achieved. While inflation soars and our residents are adjusting to the current and future economical challenges, and they are foregoing non-essential items, we need to do the same. From the next budget, if we can defer non-essential capital works projects, then we should. If we can divert some discretionary services to outside organisations and provide support rather than leadership in these programs, again, we should. If we need to reevaluate the delivery of the final stages of the city centre project, let's do that. If we need to increase our reserves and pay down debt, it should not be up to our ratepayers to pay more. It should now be up to us to spend less. Council, by supporting this officer recommendation, we've done our bit. We've made the hard decisions and we've worked very professionally, and we should be really proud of what we've achieved. We've delivered a balanced budget while delivering a record number of playground and infrastructure renewals. We're now getting closer and closer to meeting our community's expectations. But from now on, if we want those nice things and we can't pay for them ourselves and don't have reserve or grant funding, we'll just have to simply go without. Councillor Singh, I'm sorry, but I can't support your foreshadowed motion, as it would mean I would be a hypocrite and I would not be true to my commitment that I made when endorsing the long-term financial plan. But I will commit to you that I will join you next year in keeping any rate rise to an absolute bare minimum. And I will support you in the removal or deferral of discretionary projects or services to enable this. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind our residents who are doing it tough to take advantage of our financial hardship policy. There is help if you need it, and the City of Canning are really able and willing to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak either for or against? Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did have a couple other questions before you went on to another councillor, so I would like the opportunity to ask a couple of those questions in regards to what I'm seeing in front of me with the figures.
Go ahead. Yep.
Just on page 43, just for some clarity, it talks about the borrowings. There's a column there, a line item of 23-24 budget for new loans. And it's got an amount down the bottom of 5206. But then down the bottom of the page to the left, it says that the city has not budgeted to have any borrowings for the year 30th of June 2024. So that sort of conflicts with the line item. Am I reading that right, or am I missing something?
Director Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So you are correct. There are new borrowings of about 5.2 million in 23-24. That sentence at the bottom is a carryover from the template that we're using, so it's not. So we need to remove that. So you are correct. There are borrowings.
Thank you. And while we're on that same page, I just wanted some confirmation. We've got the Whaleback Golf Course perimeter fence. It looks like that has been costed out at 1.6. Is that seems awful?
I
lot
think
of money.
that relates to the driving range fence there, councillor. Some issues with the driving range, I believe. Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to be clear, that hasn't been costed at 1.6 million. It's been estimated for inclusion in the budget at 1.6 million, and until that project is properly scoped, we won't know the full extent of the expenditure required, but the estimate that we've asked for inclusion in the budget is 1.6 million, yes.
Okay, and just one final one, if I can, Mr Mayor. On page 56. Item of that page is trust funds. Just for some clarity there, first question is, with the amounts paid of 926,800 against TPS 23, are we saying that has already been paid? Is that what we're saying on that?
Director Driscoll.
Thank you.
Or is it going to be?
Mr Mayor, so that's part of the budget, so that what would be paid in 23-24, and the budget's adopted, 926,000. That's what that's presenting.
Okay, and just for my own benefit, just with the money on, for example, TPS 21, where we've got 7, well, it applies to all of them really, but the 7227, if we invest that money and we get interest from it, does that money, or does the interest from that money then go back into TPS 21, for example, or does it go back into consolidated revenue, or what happens?
Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the money will go back into that trust fund.
And finally, with the way these trust funds are set up, if it comes to a situation where we don't use that money and it has to get returned to the contributor, the original contributor of that money, what happens with how do we track the interest on that? Does the interest get returned to that contributor as well of that money?
Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the total amount would be returned, including the interest.
Thank you. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Ben Kunza.
Thanks, Mayor Hall. Look, I support the amended officer recommendation and the 23-24 budget. I think it's actually a responsible budget that the city should be proud of. Look, an overall increase of rates, fees and charges of 4.29% is well below inflation and well below other local governments who have advertised their rate in the dollar. It allows us to produce a balanced budget and a relatively small operating surplus despite the economic challenges, and make sure that the City of Canning is in a good financial position. Importantly, it also sees further investment into community infrastructure that Canning's residents and ratepayers have been demanding. The investment into our facilities, our playgrounds, our parks and reserves is ensuring that the community has the amenity and the enjoyable facilities that we expect. Councillor Spencer-Teo touched on this. I mean, due to a lack of investment in the past, many of our facilities have not been up to adequate standard. I mean, there were years in the past where the City of Canning didn't complete a single playground upgrade. There was minimal investment into maintenance, and that's why our audit showed that so many were in poor position in the past. That's not the case anymore. In the last 3 years, we've upgraded over 30 playgrounds. That's phenomenal. As Mayor Hall said, this year's a record investment into playground renewal. Many of our sports fields have modern lighting, and these projects need to be invested into. And we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. We've previously debt funded some of these projects. We're not really in a position to rest on our laurels. Whilst I agree that we need to keep our rates as low as possible, we also need to invest into that infrastructure. Residents shouldn't have to drive to Coburn or Melville to find a good playground for their family to enjoy. Our arts groups and seniors groups and our sporting clubs deserve contemporary facilities. To pick out one project funded in this year's budget that I'm proud of and excited about, and Mayor Hall talked about as well, the investment to the Shelley Beach Park Playground. Now, it's been frustrating how long this has taken to become a reality, but that's something that the council and the city should be extremely proud of. I'm looking forward to work progressing in this financial year. I think ratepayers should feel comfortable that both both the council and the administration have made tough decisions to find savings and reduce pressure on rate increases. I mean, following on some of the debate, it should be mentioned that several years ago, the long-term financial plan outlined a several-year plan to increase rates by 4.65%. And despite the inflationary pressures, we're still doing it by 4.65%. Many councils are exceeding that exponentially, and they're doing it year upon year. The city has worked hard, and it's a credit to staff for identifying further savings. Now, I'd hoped, as we mentioned last month, of a smaller increase this year than we first advertised back in May. However, obviously, we've encountered a few extra costs that weren't expected, and even in this inflationary environment, the city's increase is comparatively low. Now, I touched on this last month. Our average increase of $60 is comparatively lower than the state government's increase to their fees and charges, which was $154, despite overseeing massive surpluses. We're only balancing our budget. Every state government charge that is collected through local governments, ironically, the ones that aren't sent directly to the taxpayer, have increased substantially higher than ours. The emergency services levy, 5.38%. Street lighting is 7.5%. And I imagine that will be more over the next few years. And even despite the high inflationary environment, the state government has announced that next year the waste levy is increasing by a whopping over 13%, meaning Canning ratepayers will be paying over $3 million through the waste levy. Other local governments like Melville, they're increasing theirs by 7.85%. So I think it needs to be looked at comparatively. Now, whilst I personally don't want to put any further financial burden onto families, and I understand Councillor Singh's comments, the city remains one of the lowest rating councils, and our increase when compared to other stakeholders, even the state government, is really responsible. And as I've mentioned, I believe that the city, our ratepayers expect contemporary facilities and good services, and it's a balancing act, and we need to continue to invest into that. I just want to say thank you to CEO Littleton for the overhaul of the budget process. I think it will set the city up going forward with more of a strategic look. And I also just want to thank staff for their work and commend the budget and look forward to seeing the delivery of these projects over the financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, to Director Bowe, I believe. Director Bowe, can you please roughly, doesn't need to be exact, advise the figure which is going towards playground upgrades or renewals from the operating budget, not the capital works, from OPEX, of which is our current proposed OPEX is $126 million, 126.4. Roughly how many million dollars are going towards upgrading our playgrounds?
Director Bowe, are you in a position to be able to...
Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't like to hazard a guess at that question, but our budget for operating expenditure and maintenance expenditure across our parks area is about 19 million. A proportion of that would be allocated to playground maintenance, but I wouldn't have that figure off the top of my head, Councillor Singh.
Councillor Singh, anything further?
That's helpful, Director Bowe. So is that right to say the OPEX is more about maintaining parks? It doesn't really include renewal, well, upgrading parks or new parks?
CEO, I might ask the CEO to respond to that, CEO.
Yeah, look, that's exactly true. The OPEX budget is for maintenance, the capital budget is for renewal, and that's the way we budget, that's the way we account. In this budget, we have $1.7 million in the budget for capital renewal of playgrounds, where we're doing approximately 10, or we are doing 10. So I think the investment that we've spoken about directly in playgrounds has been quantified and spoken about in our budget workshops.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
So just to, basically I'm repeating myself here a bit, just to confirm,
I wish you wouldn't.
if we decrease the OPEX by a little bit, it shouldn't affect building new playgrounds. Is that correct?
CEO?
The focus, Councillor, when we spoke about asset renewal, asset maintenance is really critical. So my advice to Council is that we maintain our assets in the first instance. We've got $1.2 billion worth of assets that we must manage on behalf of the community. So the OPEX budget is being utilised to manage and maintain our asset database. We should always maintain our assets before we renew them.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, where are you going?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, CEO did not confirm my question, so I appreciate he explained about OPEX. My question is, if we make changes to OPEX, let's say we decrease it, it will not affect building up new playgrounds. Is that correct?
CEO.
Look, all of those are decisions for council to make. If you decrease OPEX, that is a decision that council can make. The asset renewal, or the playground renewal that has been proposed then stays the same. But those are the decisions that council are making tonight, Councillor Singh.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would still like a clear confirmation. CEO did not confirm. Yes,
think-
it's a council decision.
Yeah, Councillor, look, I'm not sure where this is going. We've been talking about this for 3 months in workshops. These are questions that I'm sure you've asked previously, but you asked the question to the CEO. I'm sorry he didn't provide the answer that you wanted, but you can't just keep asking him the same question until you get the answer that you want.
Can I get just yes or no? That's it. That's all I'm asking. Yes or no? Is that too hard of a question? Does reducing capex?
I'll refer to Director Bowe. Director Bowe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our Manager of Parks and Environment has sent me through an estimate of how much we spend on playground maintenance. It's approximately $300,000 a year. And in my experience, if you reduce your allocation to maintenance, you would need to bring forward your expenditure on renewal because your assets won't last as long.
Thank you. Satisfied with it? Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. Does anyone else want to speak to the motion? Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, also, I think that at this time of year when we talk about these things, it's always very challenging. Councillors have a different opinion on the way they see things, and so does the administration. They have their set objectives, and as councillors, we have the interests of the community. And with that in mind, I'll be speaking against the motion, only because I have spent quite a bit of time myself out in the community in the last month speaking to a lot of people, residents, business people, particularly in Canning Vale. And the commentary from all of that is very much very similar from a lot of angles. And I think the first point I'll make is, and it has been mentioned, the financial burden on residents at the moment is very, very real. There's a lot of people in our community, over 100,000, and a lot of those people rent. So when we talk about rates increases and we put up the rates, it's those renters that will be paying for all those increases, because the owners of those properties, whether it be commercial or residential, just pass on those increases straight down to the tenants, whether they are commercial tenants or whether they are residential tenants. And when we talk about some of these tenants, they are very, very much so struggling. So I think that increasing rates places only further pressure and stresses on residents already struggling to make ends meet. Many residents can't afford any increase, which will lead to family hardship and even perhaps homelessness. Secondly, negative impact to businesses. Paying more for rates from landlords leads to higher prices for consumers. This results in a decrease in business and revenue loss for local business. Thirdly, unfair distribution of costs. Canning Vale, for example, pay more rates than anyone else in the city of Canning. And now they're even going to be paying even more, while those who are not paying as much would not be affected as much. Fourthly, residents, I think, feel a lack of transparency about how these increased rates will be used and what the benefits to them are going to be. It certainly does lead, from what I'm hearing, to a lack of trust and decreases civil engagement. I know for the people of Canning Vale, when you have a look over the last 4 years that I've been here, there's not a whole lot really that they can be happy about on what's happened in Canning Vale. And I know that the Mayor has sometimes commented about different things that have happened in Canning Vale, for example, the pump track, but the pump track wasn't as a result of the ratepayers' money, that was a result of the grant. We delivered it, yes, and it's been a tremendous asset for the children of Canning Vale, and there should be more of that type of thing delivered right across the city when it comes to our youth. But when we talk about making a decision on increasing the rates, I feel at this stage the financial burden and pressures placed on residents right now is too much to bear. And that's certainly not my opinion, although I agree with it, but it is certainly from the feedback that I've had out and about talking to our community. And they have wanted me to advocate for them and advocate all the points that I have just raised. So I will be voting against the increase in the rates.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question, if I may.
Yes, of course.
Can the city confirm if funding has been reserved in the proposed budget for the footpath extension at Cody Park, as requested by the Wilson Residents and Ratepayers Association at the annual general meeting with electors?
Director. Director Bowe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Not specifically, Councillor Bain. The project's yet to be scoped, but we do believe that within the allocation for pathway renewals generally, we'll be able to accommodate that project once it's scoped.
Thank you, Director Bowe. Thank you, Councillor Bain. Anyone else? I might just then close the debate, councillors, if you don't mind, and then we'll put the matter to the vote. Thanks for your contributions, one and all. Councillor Singh, just in regards to your foreshadowed motion, I won't be supporting that. And I think the reason for that is, look, I think sometimes talk about non-essential projects is bandied around, and I think you would have to accept that the city has this year really turned its attention to saving money where it can, and we've made significant savings in this budget, and that's because people have asked us to, and I think possibly a big part of that is because councillors have been asking that as well, and I think that's a causal effect of our deliberations, and that's a good thing. But as far as non-essential projects go, where are those non-essential projects? I mean, we can stop our entire events program. We can stop delivering the Muddy Hands Festival. We can not have carols by candlelight. We can save $1 million there and have people marching in the streets. No more multicultural celebrations. We can reduce our non-essential grants program. We don't have to provide a grants program, but it actually supports so many community groups, including environmental groups. Money goes to Fiara and ISWA and multicultural groups right across the city. It supports a whole range of community groups and sporting clubs, but it's not essential that we do that. We can remove all non-essential spending on playground renewals. I don't think anyone would argue that playground renewals, when you look at the fundamental role of councils, which used to be roads, rates and rubbish, do we really need to be upgrading and quadrupling our investment in them? Is that really an essential function of a council? I'd say probably it is, because that's what our community is actually requiring of us. And I think so when we talk about non-essential expenditure, we need to be patently clear that that's not done at the sacrifice of delivering the sort of amenity, public space amenity that our residents require of us. So I really feel that we just need to be really clear on that. There's always a sacrifice to every spending. So maybe next year would be a matter of trying to work as hard as we can to identify things that are not necessarily not essential, but perhaps, as Councillor Spencer Teo said, that weren't exactly, can't remember the term that you used, but something slightly different, but not non-essential. In relation to the comments by Councillor Sweeney, and I mentioned this never-ending rhetoric around Canning Vale, but look, I'd have to say, Councillor, I can't remember once you putting to Council any solution here or a request for spending or a motion to Council requesting any improvements in Canning Vale. So when you say that nothing is happening in Canning Vale, you're the elected representative. So if nothing is actually happening, well, then I guess, that maybe some work needs to be done there for you to bring some ideas to this council, specifically during the budget process, to actually talk to us about what are the things that you feel from the extraordinary amount of feedback you tell us that you've had from residents in there about the things that people in that area would like to see. Notwithstanding, of course, that Parkwood is also part of your constituency, and there's significant spending in there as well. So I would think that the Nicholson ward has been ably funded through this, through the recommendation and this wonderful better budget. And it is a better budget because, in my opinion, from all that has been said, we are following stringently our long-term financial plan. And so when we talk about the burden on ratepayers, and I disagree with that emotive language, And I would raise again that we do have policies to assist all people through any hardship that they may feel. And we will work with every person who is feeling hardship. And I would raise the point that when the city actually advertised this rate widely across the city, not only did we not have a overwhelming response either for or against advertised rates, we didn't have a single response. We had not one resident from our 100,000 residents across 35,000 residences respond in any way and submit to us in relation to these advertised rates. So using that emotive language, I don't think gives justice to what I believe the majority of our residences think now is probably delivering good value for money in an environment, a financial environment in which we are under increasing pressure to deliver the same, just the same standard, to keep to the same standard of services, because we are under enormous pressure to deliver those at the same cost. In fact, we can't. So the long-term financial plan really is a blueprint for our financial security, and that's the financial security of this community. And it's also a road to recovery for us, and I think that we've really stayed the course over the last couple of years, and that's to the credit of this council. So I'm disappointed that councillors might not like one aspect of the 16 or 18 different points on this budget and might vote against this budget, which contains millions of dollars of tangible benefit to our community based on one assumption around one part of it. I would hope that council might adopt this budget unanimously, and I say that because whilst you may not agree with every single line item and every single aspect of it, there's no question that this budget delivers immeasurable benefit right across the community, from Queen's Park and Bentley all the way through to Shelley and Rossmoyne and to Canning Vale and Parkwood. Every corner of our community will be touched by the benefits delivered by this budget. And if you choose to vote against this budget, I would be highly disappointed, but that would be up to councillors to their discretion. I won't speak any further on it. Let's put the matter to the vote. Let's put the 2023-2024 City of Canning budget to the vote.
A substantive motion as amended CC 003-23 has been carried by absolute majority, with 7 voting for and 2 voting against, those being Councillor Singh and Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, councillors. I'm pleased to say that the budget has been adopted for 2023 and 2024. Again, my sincere and absolute thanks to staff and to our council working so diligently over the past few months. That is a significant body of work and a significant achievement for this council. And we go forward as a united group, and I'd like to propose a round of applause. Well done, everybody. Deputy Mayor joins in. Thank you. We move to item 6 on tonight's agenda, which are confidential matters, of which there are none. And on item 7, closure, there being no further business for council this evening, I now declare the special council meeting closed, the time being 7:08 p.m. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance. Thank you, councillors.